I moved into 42 Ember Lane thinking it would be a fresh start, but within a week, Michael Turner became a name whispered by neighbors and avoided by the living because the house didn't want me to leave, and whatever lived in the attic remembered my name. I moved to Ember Lane in the spring of 2018, hoping to start fresh. After a difficult breakup and months of living out of boxes, I wanted peace. Ember Lane looked like it had been lifted straight from a real estate brochure, neatly mowed, lawns, pastel shutters, and kids' bikes left on driveways. My house, number 42, sat at the very end of the cul-de-sac, partially hidden by 2 overgrown trees. It was a little cheaper than the others on the street, which the realtor explained as just bad timing on the market. I didn't care. It was quiet, clean, and finally mine. The first day passed quickly. I unpacked the essentials, ordered pizza, and sat on the living room floor surrounded by boxes. The silence was noticeable. Not peaceful, too still. No dogs barking, no laughter, not even the hum of traffic. I chalked it up to being in the suburbs after years in the city. When I went to bed, I left a light on in the hallway just to cut the stillness. It felt less like a home and more like a museum exhibit staged for someone else's life. That night, I woke up suddenly. The clock read 3:12 a.m. I remember that detail because I blinked at it for nearly a full minute, confused as to why I was awake. My heart was racing, and my sheets were damp with sweat, even though the room wasn't hot. There was no dream, no noise that startled me, just this deep, gut-level feeling that something had pulled me out of sleep. I sat up and looked around the room. Nothing, but I kept feeling like something had just been there, watching. The next morning I tried to shake the feeling. Maybe I was just stressed, or maybe my body was still adjusting to the new space. As I made coffee, I walked into the hallway and froze. There were muddy footprints, bare feet, child-sized, lean from the front door to the living room. They stopped at the edge of the rug and vanished. I stared for a long time before crouching down to touch them. Still slightly damp, no signs of forced entry. All the windows and doors were locked. I tried to come up with any rational explanation. Maybe the movers tracked something in, but the prints were far too small. I cleaned them up without really thinking about it, like erasing the evidence would undo how wrong it felt. That night, I double-checked all the locks. I even put a chair against the front door. I slept with the hallway light on again. At exactly 3:12 a.m., I woke up. No noise, no movement, just that same jolt through my chest like my heart had skipped a beat. I stared into the darkness past my doorway. The hallway light flickered once, then again, then it stayed steady. I thought I heard a noise, maybe a knock. Soft and slow, not from the door, from inside the house. I sat up and held my breath, listening. Nothing else happened. No more knocks, no more flickering. Eventually I fell asleep again, but it was restless, like my body refused to fully relax. The next morning, everything looked normal. The house was clean, undisturbed, no footprints this time. No signs of anyone having been inside. But the fear didn't go away. It had settled somewhere deep in my chest. That evening, as I pulled the attic door cord down to store some boxes, I noticed it had a faint smudge on it, like a dirty handprint. I hadn't used it before. I stood there for a long time, staring up into the dark square above me, wondering what I'd moved into. The attic became something I avoided. I didn't have a reason to go up there, not really. The boxes could wait, but the image of that smudged handprint on the pull cord stayed with me. It didn't look old. It looked recent, as if someone had grabbed it with muddy fingers. The kind of mud you'd expect from wet earth. I kept telling myself it had to be from the movers, or maybe it was just dust, but I knew better. I started locking the bedroom door at night. It didn't make sense, but it made me feel like I was doing something to protect myself. A few days passed quietly, at least during the day. Nights were something else. I kept waking up at exactly 3:12 a.m. every single night without fail. It didn't matter how early I went to sleep or how tired I was. My eyes would snap open like something had yanked me from a dream I couldn't remember. I began to dread that minute. It felt like the house held its breath at 3:12. No noise, no movement, just a heavy pressure in the air, like being underwater. I would lie perfectly still, afraid to look around, afraid to even blink too loudly. That kind of silence doesn't feel natural. It feels staged, like something is watching and waiting. One night, I left my phone recording audio on my nightstand just to reassure myself I was imagining it. In the morning, I listened to the playback. For the first few minutes, it was just my own quiet breathing and the hum of the ceiling fan. Then, at exactly 3:12, something changed. There was a click, then silence, then, so faint I almost missed it, a soft tapping like fingers drumming slowly on a wooden surface. It lasted about 10 seconds and stopped. My breathing quickened in the recording, but I never moved. I didn't even remember hearing it. That was the first time I considered leaving. But where would I go? I couldn't afford to move again, and besides, what would I even tell someone? That my house didn't feel right. That I was waking up every night at the same time. That I'd heard tapping on a recording. No one would believe me, and I barely believed myself, so I stayed. I told myself it was just a bad stretch. Maybe I had sleep issues I didn't know about. Then the hallway light started flickering every time I walked past. Only at night. I replaced the bulb, then the entire fixture. It didn't help. Sometimes it would go out completely, then snap back on the moment I turned away. The air in the hallway began to feel colder than the rest of the house. Not by a few degrees, it felt like walking into a fridge. I tested the vents. Everything was working fine, but no matter how high I turned the heat, the hallway remained freezing. It was always the coldest at 3:12. That night I heard something new, a creaking sound, slow and deliberate, like floorboards shifting under weight. But it didn't come from my room or the hallway, it came from above. From the attic, I lay completely still, heart pounding in my chest. The sound stopped after a few seconds. Then there was silence. I told myself it was the house settling, just old wood reacting to the cold. That explanation lasted about 5 minutes until I got up, walked into the hallway, and saw the attic door hanging open. The ladder had unfolded itself halfway, swaying slightly, like someone had just climbed down. I stood in the hallway, staring up at the half-unfolded attic ladder. It creaked gently, just enough to let me know it had recently been disturbed. The air around it was colder than ever, sharp and dry like the inside of a freezer. I didn't go up, I couldn't. Instead, I pushed the ladder back up with a broom handle and locked the access latch shut. Then I dragged a chair from the dining room and wedged it tightly beneath the panel. I stood there for a long time, just watching it, half expecting it to swing open again right in front of me, but it didn't, not that night. In the morning, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I even went for a walk around the neighborhood, hoping the fresh air would shake the heaviness from my chest. The neighbors waved politely, mowing their lawns or washing their cars, acting like this street wasn't rotting from the inside out. I wanted to ask them if they'd ever experienced anything strange in their homes, if they had ever heard stories about number 42, but I kept quiet. I didn't want them to look at me like I was unraveling, even though I was. That evening, I made a decision. I was going to open the attic during the day, just to prove to myself there was nothing up there. If I waited too long, I knew I'd lose the nerve completely. So I grabbed a flashlight, pulled the chair away, and opened the panel. The ladder creaked down and settled. A rush of cold air drifted down over me, and I fought the urge to slam it shut again. I climbed slowly, one rung at a time, flashlight clutched so tightly it hurt my fingers. The attic was small, dusty, and smelled faintly of something sweet and rotting. I swept the light across the insulation and wooden beams. Nothing moved, nothing jumped out. But in the far left corner, tucked behind a stack of old boards, something caught the light. I stepped over carefully, expecting a dead squirrel or maybe an old toy. What I found made my mouth go dry. It was a stuffed animal, a small lamb, the kind you might find in a baby's crib. It was yellowed with age, but its fur was clean to clean for something that had been sitting in an attic. It looked like it had been recently placed there, sitting upright with its head tilted slightly to the side. I didn't touch it. I backed away, climbed down, and shut the attic door harder than I meant to. I bagged the lamb in 2 layers of trash bags and threw it into the outside bin. I stayed up that night, afraid to fall asleep. I left every light on in the house. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m. At 3:12, the lights flickered throughout the house, one by one, then returned to normal. A single soft knock echoed from the hallway. In the morning, I stepped out of my bedroom and stopped cold. The trash bags I'd tossed out were gone. The lid of the bin was still shut, but the bags weren't there. I checked the kitchen and living room, afraid of what I might find. Everything looked untouched, but in the center of the hallway floor, perfectly clean and upright, was the stuffed lamb. Its head was tilted in the opposite direction now, toward my bedroom. I didn't touch the lamb. I couldn't. I stepped around it carefully, like it might move if I got too close. It sat there in perfect silence, facing my bedroom door, its small stitched mouth curved slightly upward like a smirk. I stood at the end of the hallway staring at it for what felt like hours, the morning light casting long shadows across the floor. I finally picked it up using a dish towel and tossed it into a box, sealing it with 3 layers of tape. Then I took the box outside and locked it in the trunk of my car. I didn't have a plan, I just needed it gone. I didn't go to work that day. I stayed home, pacing between rooms, checking locks, opening and closing doors just to be sure. I even put a wedge under the attic panel and nailed the closet door shut. I needed control. I needed barriers. I was spiraling, and I knew it, but fear has a way of turning everything into a threat. Every shadow looked like it was hiding something. Every sound could have been the start of something worse. When night came, I took a sleeping pill and left every light in the house burning. I set my phone to record again and placed it on the dresser. Despite the pill, I still woke up at exactly 3:12. This time my chest was tight and it felt like the air had thickened around me. I couldn't move, not even to turn my head. My limbs were heavy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I lay there, eyes wide open, unable to even blink. From the corner of my vision, I thought I saw something move across the doorway, slow and hunched, not walking, crawling. I couldn't see it clearly, but I could hear it. The soft scrape of skin on the floor, the faintest sound of something breathing, almost a wheeze, and underneath it, a quiet rhythm, tap, 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 like fingernails gently tapping wood. My mind screamed, but my body stayed frozen. Then, after what felt like forever, it stopped. The room gradually released its grip on me, and I sat up gasping for air, every nerve screaming. I grabbed my phone and played the recording. The usual silence filled the first hour. Then, at 3:12, the audio cut for 3 full seconds. When it resumed, there was a low humming noise. Not electronic, human. It sounded like a child humming a lullaby off-key. It went on for about 10 seconds before cutting off abruptly. There were no footsteps, no whispering. Just that humming, and then a single knock. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I turned every light on again, even in the closets. I sat on the floor with my back against the bedroom door, holding a kitchen knife I knew wouldn't help. At dawn, I went to my car to get the box. I popped the trunk, heart pounding, already expecting the worst, but it was still there, untouched. I opened the box slowly. It was empty. No tape had been peeled, no rips, no gaps, just an empty cardboard box, as if I had imagined placing the lamb inside in the first place. I slammed the trunk shut and locked the car. That afternoon, while trying to distract myself, I opened the bottom drawer of my bedroom dresser for the first time since moving in. It was stiff, stuck slightly, like it hadn't been opened in years. I tugged it loose and felt my stomach drop. There, folded neatly on top of an old baby blanket, was the lamb. Its eyes had changed. Instead of the original glass beads, there were 2 black buttons stitched crudely in their place. They weren't there before, and this time, its mouth wasn't smiling. I don't remember dropping the drawer. I just remember the sound it made as it hit the floor, wood splintering slightly, echoing through the house like a warning shot. The lamb lay face down now, its button eyes hidden, its stitched mouth pressed into the blanket like it had finally grown tired of pretending. I backed away, slow and careful, like I was afraid it might suddenly stand up. Every part of me screamed to leave, to run, to never come back. But I didn't. Not yet. I gathered every flammable item I could find, newspapers, old bills, cooking oil, even the bottle of rubbing alcohol from the bathroom cabinet. I dumped them all into the fire pit in the backyard and dropped the lamb in last. Then I lit a match and watched as the flames erupted, orange and wild, smoke curling into the sky like a warning to something above. The lamb burned quickly, its button eyes popped with a soft crack, and the fabric curled in on itself, black and brittle. I waited until it was nothing but ash. I didn't leave until the last ember died. That night, I slept at a motel on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just a single room with a flickering TV and walls thin enough to hear the man next door coughing through the night. But it was enough. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wake up at 3:12. I didn't hear tapping, or humming, or feel the weight of something crawling along the floor. I started to believe I'd finally done it, that whatever had clung to that house was tied to that lamb, and destroying it had broken the connection. I let myself believe it. I returned to the house the next morning, half expecting the air to feel lighter, warmer. But it didn't. If anything, it felt worse. Still, I walked through every room, making sure the attic was still sealed, the closets still nailed shut, the hallway light still flickering. I told myself it was all psychological, that my brain just needed time to reset. Then I opened the fridge to grab a bottle of water and found something resting on the middle shelf, a new toy. It wasn't the lamb. This one was smaller, wooden, a spinning top. Faded red paint swirled around its surface, chipped and worn like it had been handled too many times by too many hands. I stared at it, heart dropping into my stomach. It was positioned perfectly in the center, like it had been placed there with care. I didn't touch it. I closed the fridge, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door without looking back. I drove until I couldn't recognize the town anymore. I stayed in another motel, then another, eventually renting a small apartment in a neighboring state. I didn't tell anyone why I left. I barely spoke to anyone at all. I changed my number, left my job, erased my presence from Ember Lane. I thought distance might matter. But 2 weeks later, I woke up in my new apartment, heart pounding. The clock on my nightstand read 3:12 a.m. My breath caught in my throat. The room was freezing. I sat up slowly, every nerve screaming that something was off. I glanced at the closet across from my bed. It was open. Inside, sitting on the floor in the dark, was the wooden spinning top, and just beside it, barely visible in the shadows, were the faint impressions of muddy footprints child-sized facing my bed.